Yay! And we are back. The first episode of This Is Not Advice, day 121. This is the first episode of 2021.
No. For those of you who are new, we do one question about work every day. And Min and I are startup investors in the future of work. And the reason we call this Is Not Advice is because in our experience, advice is somebody else telling you how you should live your life. But really, what they're talking about is how they want to live their life. And your life is yours. So we're going to give you our perspective based on what we do. And then you're going to decide for yourself. So what's our question today, Min?
Well, this week we wanted to tackle a bunch of questions that I think we got, over the course of the last couple of weeks about finding a new job, growing in a job that you might already have, or transitioning in a role at the company that you might be at. And so today's is, do I need a resume if I'm job hunting? And if not, what's a better alternative?
Yeah, this is one of these areas where, man, did I blow a lot of expertise in life, because it used to be that the answer was almost always yes, at least for, call it like information industry jobs. I'm not talking about if you wanted to be a tradesperson or something like that. I don't know those industries as well. It was standard. And man, I learned how to like format it carefully and tell the story through a resume and dot, dot, dot. And now the answer is, it entirely depends on the context in which you are job searching. And so if I now get an email out of the blue with somebody saying, oh, and attached is my resume, it's actually a bit of a negative signal. So in the world of startups and tech, you have enough of a public biography that whether you're on LinkedIn, which is probably the default, or somewhere else, a thing that you say in public, which I therefore know has been exposed to the sunlight of transparency, and therefore is more likely to be true and consistently presented. And where, by the way, I know how to read a LinkedIn because I'm so familiar with them, is so much more valuable to me than having like a 2 to 3 page PDF. And let alone, by the way, do not use anything other than a PDF if you're going to send a resume in that way, because that's the only way you control the formatting. And then in other contexts, for example, a lot of folks who I know are now talking to the Biden administration about some role, working with them or another. There is a step in that process for many of those roles, which is sort of the formal submission of a resume, and where they may perceive it, I don't know in that context, but in some contexts, they perceive it to be down market to be relying on your LinkedIn, because that's just this like website that's out there that some people use and some don't. In the financial services industry, use of LinkedIn is still pretty inconsistent. So the answer went from absolutely you must to maybe not, and it may hurt you. Now, if I were going to do a job search, would I still prepare a resume? Yeah, I still probably would, because going through the exercise of putting it together and thinking about what do I want to emphasize and what order, all that, still really valuable. So that's how I think about it. But man, you hunted more recently, I think, than I have, since I've been sitting here for 8 years at Bloomberg Beta on the receiving end. I'm curious how that lines up with what you think.
Well, we'll talk about a little bit of that later this week about what to do if you've been at the same organization for a long time. But in terms of resume, it definitely depends on your industry. Like there are some standards that you can't get around. Obviously, if you're applying to like a big company, they'll ask you for your resume. I think the thing that might be different is it's like a yes and so. If you are going through the recruiting process and you make it through like the screening or something like that, assume that they will Google you, right? And so if you have other like digital breadcrumbs about who you are, whether it is like social media that you use or personal website or blog posts that you've written or something like that, I think that all contributes to what is now like the modern resume of like, who are you as a person and do we want you to represent our organization?
Yeah, and I just say, in addition to the industry, and if you don't know, you have to either ask somebody or make your best guess or observe what others do. It also has to do with the nature of the role, because sometimes for very senior roles, I mean, I get cold emails all the time of like, I am looking for a role as a chief something officer at a big startup. Sometimes if you are sending me your resume, it's all I need to know. Like it's already a step in the wrong direction.
Totally. Okay, so this is like a meaty topic and we'll have more questions about it. But if I could leave everyone with one tactical advice, buy your domain, your name domain.
Yes, good one. Or some variation of it, because,
or gift it to someone.
Joe Smith may not be available. Fortunately, Roy Bahat was.
Yeah, and so that's one.
Roy Bahat, so watch out, kid.
Okay, well, that is all for today. If you have another question about work that you want us to answer, drop them in the comments below. You can find us on Twitter and LinkedIn and all sorts of places. And that was today's Not Advice.
To be continued. Thank you, Min.
Continued.